Great. Yeah, as Mark says, my name is Andrea. I'm based in South Africa. I'm the MD of AMI's Impact Business Unit, which means I oversee all of our programs of development partners. Very briefly, we are a BDS provider ourselves and a capacitator of BDS providers. We've supported 37,000 businesses since our inception 10 years ago. And in our recently released Impact report, we quantify the creation of 97,000 direct and indirect jobs. And over $130 million added to African economies since our creation. And you can see some of our partners there, and over 30% of the businesses that we work with are in ag. So we are sector agnostic, and the BDS support we provide and the BDS providers we support, but definitely a strong focus on agri. Yeah, so for us, moving away from only direct BDS support and into kind of what we would term ecosystems focused work and capacitating BDS providers is really core to what we're up to at the moment. And we think there's massive opportunity for impact. So many of us will know some of this, but just a reminder of what BDS in Africa looks like. We're talking about not a market that includes kind of a handful of established players and therefore competition. It's not a developed market, right? We don't have agreed standards of quality. We don't have agreements around what things should cost and around who's doing well. We're talking about a very large fragmented ecosystem with many small providers and some leaders. So our work in Uganda, for example, recently trained 200 BDS providers there. Those 200, between them, had supported 46,000 SMEs, but 50% of those were supported by the top 15. So we saw these kind of leaders emerging, but this long tail. Growth Africa's work in Ethiopia shows that most of the market there, and really thousands, if not tens of thousands of BDS providers, if you're counting individuals, earn just a few $1,000s a year. And we know that this market and research by Growth Africa and by ourselves really supports this, is predominantly development funded. We are seeing development aid in the billions flow through to African BDS. So that prompts a really big question of, is it working? That's the first kind of piece of context. And then if we kind of zoom into the local BDS provider, which is where we often work, here's an example of Aristide. So Aristide is a Rwandan government-employed business development agent, a particular role in Rwanda that's being created by the government of funding several hundred business development advisors across the country. He works in that role part-time. It cannot sustain him, so he works in a financial institution, but he would like to go full-time. We worked with Aristide in 2021 in a program to strengthen the personal businesses of BDS providers. So it wasn't actually focused on changing their practices in terms of business support, but on helping them manage their cash flows and reach out to new customers. And he's someone that we engage with through that program, and is one of the first group of BDS providers who really got us thinking of, there could be really an existing untapped resource here for reaching SMEs at a much greater scale and much greater dispersion than what we as AMI might be able to achieve alone. So since 2021, it has become kind of a really significant focus for us, is how can we unlock the resources of individuals like Aristide, as well as those bigger businesses that exist to support SMEs in ag and beyond. And I won't give you kind of the full history of how we got there, but we've had really exciting opportunities to take the research-backed approach that we have developed for SME support and deployed in ag, which is now the subject of an RCT with MIT, and we have significant data to support the approach, and worked out different channels through which we can disseminate that approach for indirect delivery by other BDS providers at scale. So, for example, we're working with the Private Sector Foundation in Uganda. We've recently had 2 standards for BDS accepted in Uganda, and I know AMEA have exciting learnings to share in the standard space also. But we're seeing appetite of local bodies like PSFU and of funders like MCF who supported this work to develop agreed norms about what works in BDS provision and what should be upheld as a standard. Now, of course, there's no use in having a standard if there's no way to help BDS providers to meet that standard. So there are a range of different BDS provider capacity building programs that we're engaged in. Development funders like DGGF are supporting us to build a capacity building academy. Sorry, I think someone needs to mute. And there we go. To build a capacity building academy for BDS providers that is less of your participants like Aristide and more of your kind of businesses with a few employees. Really excitingly, we're now doing work with the Development Bank of Rwanda, through which we will equip 240 individual BDAs like Aristide, and we're terming them growth guides, to reach tens of thousands of SMEs over a period of 3 years in Rwanda with very targeted access to finance support, so helping them to navigate kind of a specific set of local loans. The approach we're taking there, we're terming the GROW approach, the AMI GROW approach, which is what we term kind of our core SME growth methodology, and is what we're now seeking to disseminate through indirect delivery. And our GDS Foundation are supporting us to really test this in different environments. So they're supporting the deepening of work in Uganda and helping us to kind of expand the reach of standards programs and BDS provider capacity building programs to really develop that out. So we're underpinning this with an online platform, something that I know others here are also working in this way. We developed an online platform specifically for the African environment, which we used both to develop SMEs and to create private BDS provider growth academies. And something that we're really thinking about in depth as we build this work out is, what are the incentives for BDS providers to adopt new approaches, to bother with listening to what AMI or PSFU or DGGF thinks is good BDS? And that's going to be all around incentives, right? And it's been incredibly exciting for us very recently to see some major development partners, specifically in ag, identifying that what we need is a functioning, high-quality pool of local BDS providers, and we are willing to invest in their capacitation as a precursor to broader SME growth programs. So we want to develop the pool of BDS providers that we can then provide with funding to reach the SMEs we want to reach. Because there is a clear incentive for a BDS provider to engage. It's like, okay, if development partners are saying, we will invest in smaller local BDS providers with our development funds, if we can work with another kind of local champion to bring them up to a certain standard, that's a real incentive for BDS providers to kind of agree to adopting kind of agreed norms of standards and engaging with capacitation programs. But beyond those kind of external incentives, we're just seeing considerable appetite for support from BDS providers. So I've got 2 testimonials on the screen here from Ugandan BDS providers who took part of it in our program there with PSFU. And beyond the fact that PSFU were trying to drive BDS standards and saying, you know, you can get more support if you adopt these, they're just saying it's fantastic to be supported in improving our practices. We're individuals working very dispersed geographically, often supporting ag SMEs, and we want to improve our practice. We want to have a better service offering for our clients. And we're really glad to have this opportunity to share with one another and to engage with new tools. So each of these BDS providers have got access to the AMI platform where they can draw tools and that they can use directly with SMEs, from diagnostics through to cash flows and business plans and whatever it might be, a really big range of tools. So why do this? So for us as AMI, we believe we have a BDS formula that works. It's proven over 10 years. And it's exciting for us to think if every one of the estimated billions of development dollars that go to African BDS programs every year, so the number I have is $7 billion in 2018, could go to a research-backed approach that is proven to create jobs. Imagine the impact that could be unlocked for African ag SMEs and for all sectors. So if every packed training room where people are falling asleep or checking their phones while someone lectures on the front about what good entrepreneurship looks like, what good ag entrepreneurship looks like, could be transformed into an engaging, research-backed, tool-oriented growth program for SMEs, we think that the transformation of livelihoods could be exponential. That's why we're excited about this. That's why we're supporting BDS providers. And thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of our vision for the space.